G'day, I'm Morissette Kitchell. I'm a Torres Strait Islander living in the Torres Straits. I'm here on Thursday Island. I guess my yarn today would be about my life and my journey in the Royal Australian Navy. I enlisted from here at the age of 15, going on 16, at HMAS Steel in Fremantle, Western Australia. I guess my wanting to join the Navy was, again, like just following on with my elders, all the elder brothers and sisters who enlisted in the Defence Force. And that urge, where my front yard is, me and another couple of sailors, looking out, we'll see all the warships going past to Vietnam and back again. US Navy ships, Australian ships, carriers and destroyers. And it was like a movie show. Torres Strait is a photographic movie show. But also mainly I was influenced by our forefathers in the Torres Strait Light Infantry Battalion. There was about 880 something of our men. Like me, some of them were very young when they enlisted. I think some of them lied about their age to get in. But that was the influence there. It was all about, and I guess at the age of 14, 15, I made up my mind that I had a responsibility, an obligation to protect the Torres Strait and our island sovereignty. It's like our country, that's what they did, and that's what I wanted to do. And the only way that I was going to do that is, as seafarers we are up here, was being the Navy.
My name is Raymond Rosendale. I'm a Gugialangi, English and Danish man. I'm very proud of my heritage. I was born in Nambour in Queensland in 1965. My father, who was living prior to that on the mission at Hopevale in North Queensland, went to work for Thiess to build the canals and the suburbs that are all over the Sunshine Coast now. I was the child of one of the very first modern Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal marriages in Queensland. Something that had never happened commonly since early this century. My parents were change makers. They did things differently. In the days when I was born, my father still had to have a piece of paper approving him to live outside the reserve. I grew up travelling between North Queensland and the Sunshine Coast. I grew up in a place where there were no other Aboriginal families except ours. And then I would go where it was a majority of Aboriginal families. I didn't know who I was as a child, what my story was. It was very confusing. I either belonged in one place or I didn't belong in either. It's hard to think about it now, but I was very much led in my youth to think that social justice was something I wanted to be involved in. I didn't know what that was back then. I just knew that that wasn't right. It wasn't right to not belong. It wasn't right to be the odd kid out wherever I went. Too white in one place, too black in another.
My name is Steve Collins. I was born on the 5th of January 1949. And I come from Ideville.
Noel David Pope, born in Mundubra, grew up in Ideville. I'm the middle child of a family of three, my brother Steve and a sister Nolene, who's now deceased. In our early days of growing up, most of it was spent out in the bush on outstations, lived in tents, very seldom went to town. We were lucky to go to town 2 times a year, 3 times a year. And it was a time when it was a really good chance of growing up, because we had other families, Indigenous families around. We never mixed very much with the non-Indigenous kids. Usually the non-Indigenous kids were the station owners' kids. They never played with us at all. So we had our own little family group, and we became very accustomed to the bush. We learnt everything about the bush. We learnt how to hunt, we learnt how to fish, we learnt everything of how to survive.
Our family practically grew up on Idwell Station. The whole lot of them, we all worked on there. We were brought up by our grandparents, Bunda and Janet. They had 9 children of their own, and we had the best life going.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'd like to thank you for having me here today and providing me the opportunity to give my story. As a veteran and as an Indigenous person of the Gubbi people of Queensland, which is in the Moreton Bay area, born in Sydney. I was 2 when my mother moved from Sydney to Newcastle because of my dad's work, and I grew up there until I was 19 and joined the military. As a kid, like, times were tough. We were pretty low on the socio-economic scale of things. In a Indigenous community suburb of the town of Maitland. So it's pretty rough going through primary school and high school. It wasn't until I was a little bit older that I'd found out my grandmother was in the Air Force around the time of Korea, that her uncle was a veteran of Kokoda Track, and he served with the 42nd Infantry Battalion at Kokoda. And so I always knew that we had a bit of a military background as a family, particularly down our Indigenous family side. And then my dad's side of the family, they were always firefighters, as far back as I can remember or know of. So it's always been a family of service in some way, form or another. And I joined to make sure that what happened on 9/11 in America will never happen here on this holy ground, on the ground that my traditional ancestors come from. That's why I joined the army. And being able to be as the tip of the spear is arguably with the best special forces unit in the world. I'll forever cherish that.
My name is Napao Pedro Stephen. I was born on Thursday Island in 1955. I grew up on Stephen Island, which is called Ugar. It's in the eastern islands of the Torres Strait, commonly known as Kemer Kemer Miriam. Then I actually my father moved to Thursday Island in the mid-50s to actually settle the family at a reserve on Thursday Island called Tamai Town. It was actually just commencing my high school term. I was elected the school captain, and by April the 5th, I got a yellow envelope, and it was called out on the parade that I was enlisted into the Royal Australian Navy. I went to Fremantle to the Naval Academy boarding school, or the HMS Luan. Followed other Tamai Town boys that have actually joined before me. That was the second time I wore shoes in 1971. Before that, 1967, I wore shoes because I went down as a Boy Scout.
Good afternoon. My name's Alan Leslie Thorpe. I was born in Cygnet in October 1950. Cygnet's a small town in the Yuan Valley, a great little town. and I'm a descendant of the Tasmanian Aboriginals. And history says that, as we know, that the last Tasmanian people were at Oyster Cove, which closed in 1874 after a big flood. And as most people would know, Truganini, who was the last full-blood Aboriginal, died in 1874, and that was the time they closed Oyster Cove. And of course, my people, Fanny Cochrane Smith, had been to Oyster Cove, also worked in the Cygnet area, and was granted a large amount of money for those times. And she built a church at Nichols Rivulet, and that was a church I used to attend as a young boy, growing up in Nichols Rivulet. I used to remember going into that church that she built at Nichols Rivulet, and in the church was actually the photo of Fanny Cochrane Smith. Of course, she was maiden name was Fanny Cochrane, and she married the Irish sailor William Smith, of course, and they had a daughter called Mary Jane, and Mary Jane was the mother of my grandfather, and that's why the name became Fanny Cochrane Smith. People often ask me the question, why didn't you have a Aboriginal name? But back then, you weren't allowed to speak the language, and you weren't allowed to have Aboriginal names, so that's why she was known as Fanny Cochrane Smith, and never ever had a Aboriginal name.
My name is Milton Kayasi Ibuai Wallet. I was born here at Thursday Island General Hospital, and in a custom of my culture at Saibai, I was traditionally adopted, which I didn't know until 34 years old, but who I was. But it's in our culture and cultural protocols that it is taboo to talk about the adoption. I mean, it was sad that my biological parents lived not right next door. I call them auntie and uncle. The uncle and auntie, what in our culture we say, Amar and Bab. So the family connection was there then, and the community itself, which is totally different. And coming from the island at the same time, little known about English. I remember sitting in a classroom way behind, and a teacher was throwing chalks at us, like that. And he made me sit in the front. And then, my father, grandfather, uncles, they all joined the army.
My name is Russell Tasman Butler, and I was born here in Townsville. I'm the only one in my family born in Townsville. All the rest are born up in Ingham. And I lived at Black River, on the banks of Black River, and that's where we lived, and we had no electricity. I was really happy where I was, and I knew somebody had to look after my grandmother, so I was the one. And I learned all the stories, the cultural side of it. And she was the one who taught me how to learn to listen, because listening is one of the most important things that we had to learn. Because if you didn't learn to listen, you didn't learn at all. Because Gran couldn't read or write, like I said. Then I went to school, and then the ganger come up to me one day and he says, "Hey, there's a government letter here for you," and it's a big white, brown government letter. And I said, "Okay, better have a look." And it was in 1968. And that letter came and it said, National Service. And then I said to him, "Well, I think I'm going to make a decision and go, because I'd like to." I met a few army people, And I said, look, I think I'll join the army. I'll do this conscription thing. So I filled it in. I went into Sturt Street here where the recruiting office was, handed it in. Next thing I know, I was called up. 17th intake, 1734824, and never looked back.
Claude Stanley Malone, born 1st of the 949. My service number is 1202577. I was a sapper in the Royal Australian Engineers Unit, where I served in Townsville in 18 Field Squadron, and in Brisbane 24 Construction Squadron. And from there, when they sent me when I finished corps training, they sent me to Townsville, then down to Brisbane and Vietnam, then back to Brisbane. I was told by the recruiting officer that I wasn't going there. The war will be finished by the time I finished my corps training and everything. I was told a lie. I told my parents that, and they said good, because they knew what was going on, see it on the news and that, and they didn't want me to go. They call us tunnel rats. There's bunker systems underneath. I used to do that, go down, and they stopped that then, because what's the use? We used to just blow the entrances or the exit. It was too dangerous. And he sent you down with a 45. There's big bunker systems, hospital underneath, like housing where the battalion slept and all that. That's pretty, cluey. The Viet Cong, the Vietnamese. They had everything underground, and this was their job to find them. I didn't know.
Hello, my name is Peter James Haggerty, and I was born at Cherbourg on the 1st of December 1943. I served in the army for 6 years, and my units were 7th Field Squadron firstly after my recruit training. And then I was posted to Vietnam, and I served over there for approximately 9 months. The army lulls you into a sense of belonging where you don't even know that you're an Aboriginal, and it doesn't matter. You're black or white or brindle, and as long as you can get on in the army, you're fine. And it lulled me into a lot of senses. I've got to tell a funny story, but it's back in the battle. It was back in Australia after I came back from Vietnam, and it was at Inogra, and it was a payday, and I was coming from the orderly room, and I raced across, which is a no-no. The squadron sergeant major, he hated you walking on his lawns. I cut across the lawn, the last bit of lawn, and he's about 300, 400 metres away down the road at the guard hut, and I can hear him yell out to me, "Sapper Haggerty, get off my lawn." And I walked, what the bloody hell, how did the bloody hell he knew me, And so one of the guys in the line said to me, "Oh, wake up yourself, Haggerty, you're the only black bastard in the unit." And, those sort of things are, shit, you don't even think about being black, that's what was funny about it all. And
Eric John Law, service number 1202100. I was born here at Cherbourg, did all my schooling here at Cherbourg, and actually went straight into the army after I left high school. So my dad, who was a World War I veteran, I made a bet with him, which when I look back at it wasn't the smartest move, but I made a bet with him that if my birthday came up in the conscription campaign, then that's an omen that I would join up. So of course my birthday came up, and then I just joined the army. But when I reflect back on it, it was good that I followed in my father's and all my uncle's footsteps, so that was a good thing.
The first 3 or 4 years of the army was probably the best time of my life. You join this organisation where, yes, they break you down and reshape you into their vision or their mould of what they want you to be, but you're young and 20 and you're going through it together, and then when you get to a unit, they instill this sense of ownership and accountability and really make you hold your head high and achieve and believe that there is nothing that you can't achieve, and just instill in you mateship, and that, like, first and foremost, that you can't do anything by yourself. You need good mates and good people around you. And although I haven't spoken to some blokes for 5 years since I've been out of the army, I know I can pick up the phone and they'll always be there, or they know that they can pick up the phone and I'll always be there for them.
Back from Vietnam, there was nothing else to do but work on the council, back to labour and job, out in the bush again, mustering again. And a lot of that time there, you didn't know what was happening to you. Suddenly, you were angry, and even now, I'm ashamed of some of the things that happened, because from 71 to 81, a lot of it I can't remember, and that from what was happened there, that, God, there was through relationships, you went through relationship, you went fighting your mates and that, and the only thing that saved me in a lot of that stuff was I took up football and that, and rugby league, and back in those days you could punch somebody in that. And you can't do it now and that, but that helped with it. Didn't, there were things that I'm ashamed of what I've done in those days and that, but
couldn't explain myself when I come back. I guess it sort of hit me, and I didn't know what happened to my years over there. It's hard to explain, going to war and coming back, and I just can't explain it, really. Yeah. Because I wish I could, but I sort of, just didn't want to talk about it or have anything to do with that part of my life. That 11 months I spent over there, 10, 11 months over there, Vietnam. I didn't want to try to forget it, but it comes back, haunts you at times, I just want to forget all that, whatever happened, that happened to me over there.
For the first 10 years, I think I suffered really badly with PTSD. Trust was hard to, put in people. There was a lot of things that, sleepless nights, waking up and couldn't get back to sleep and things like that, with the horror minds going through you, seeing your mates get blown up on minefields and standing on mines and stuff like that. They're picking up the pieces afterwards, It's just, it all went through your minds. And it was a traumatic time. It's a very traumatic time, but no, I'm over it. I'm over it now, basically.
I think what really drove me to realise I was different was I was maybe 5 years old, went to the bank with my father, he wanted to withdraw some money from his own pay, and the teller wouldn't let him because it hadn't been countersigned by my mum. I didn't understand what that was at the time, and I've had that conversation since with mum, and it was about that Dad, as an Aboriginal man, couldn't withdraw his own money. Now, that should have changed by 1970s, but it hadn't. There were still people who thought that was the way things were done. That's burned into my memory. As I grew older, I realised that people weren't always what they said they were. And that, I think, drove me towards a military career, because I saw my uncles, both Aboriginal and not Aboriginal, in the military. In fact, I've since found that there isn't a conflict, I think, since World War I where some member of my family hasn't served.
So sometimes when you're coming through what I call the pathways of life, and there's certain ages that you meet those pathways, you just need to step back and have a good think, what's the best for me and what's the best for my future? And in that future you look at things, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children. What's the best place to be? What's the best job should I have? How am I going to do this? And in line with that, I always say, always have respect for other people and always be willing to listen, because people have got as much right to say what they want to say, and you should have respect for it. You may not agree with it, but you still should have respect for it, because that's what they're thinking. And you can learn a lot from that.
That was probably the turning point in my life. Ash being killed. Whatever I planned to, whatever my path was before that happening, in the military, outside the military, it all changed in that moment. And it's taken me a long time to figure out how I'd use that for good, how to make me a better person. Sometimes I find myself just in a state of such hatred for the world and anybody that gets in my way, because I feel like it's delaying me or obstructing me from achieving my goals. And my main goal, or my main mission in life since the death of Ash, is always to live two lives. One for him and one for myself. Like, he was killed at 22. The day that I got that call, Mully and I were on Sub 1 Corporal together. And Mully just come back from his rotation where he'd just seen Snowy killed. And when I had to drive on the base to get my dress uniform, Mully's like, "Oh, are you okay?" And he put his arm around me, and some days I send him a message and we always have a bit of a chat. Particularly here in Perth, like we still text a fair bit with us moving recently. But yeah, in the years that I was in Brisbane, for those 5 or 6 years I was in Brisbane with 42 and with Roop McCall. Roop's so Roop was the one that took me away for that weekend up on the piss, where I met all those other lads. I would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for Sean Mulqueen and for Steph. Twice I've tried to kill myself. Both times Mully and Roop have been there to pull me out of it, pull me out of those deep dark holes. They're two blokes that I would go to the ends of the earth for.
You can carry a lot of things hidden. You can hide a lot of things, and we've all done it in different ways. But that makes you bitter. An old Aboriginal guy that couldn't talk really good English, when he saw me as a young person, and he saw me as a hangry, bitter young man, and because we worked on a station together, he looked at me and he said to me, the Aboriginal way is they've got to symbolise things, they've got to put it in a story. And he said this to me. He said, "You got to stop riding that horse called vengeance. You got to stop leading that pack horse called payback." He said, "Because those two horses are going to turn around and kick the shit out of you." Meaning that, get rid of the anger. He said, change them horses' name, call them love, call them honesty, call them loyalty. And this is an old full-blood Aboriginal that had no education, couldn't read and write. He's telling me this. You know, and I've always kept that in mind. I had to get rid of the anger before I could move on, you know. There's a lot of things happened to me that, especially what really came out of a lot of that, Jeff, was I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the problem, but I thought I was. That sense of rejection, you know, looking for a place to belong. All of us as human beings, and our kids. The Aboriginal people had it, and they had it down pat. That's my mob. Being safe was the paramount. That just being safe. If you don't feel safe, your mind's gonna play tricks with you. And the military gave me that. I felt safe in the army. I felt safe with my mates, but there was always that certain part that was always gonna, if it was one-on-one, I was gonna back myself.
I work with Vietnam Veterans Counseling Service, and we spoke to a lot of younger veterans. A veteran to us is not the old fella sitting in the corner with all his medals and grey beard. They're now about 21 years old, they're 18 years old, they're veterans. Some of them have got PTSD, so, but my focus is more on the newer veterans of today of Australia. With safety being paramount, best worry for this is our patch, and this is what we look after, and we do it with pride.
But it's about looking after other people. And the other thing I would like to say to our young people in particular is, let's not just constantly talk about things, but let's do it. You know, like Martin Luther King says, you know, a man should not be judged on the colour of their skin, but on their actions, on what they do. And that's the message I try to get across to our young people. And I get across this other message that if you got your culture, and you got a very good education, and you got the support of your family, nothing will stop you.
When you talk about your culture, or your story about you, Torres man, do it with pride and passion. But people like us, and those people here in Thursday Island, they start to show who we are really. Life is just a journey. You and I write our own story.